Hi, this is Pastor Ted Marshall. Welcome to VRM, Veterans Radio Ministry, and this is Devotionals, the rest of the story. It's getting close to Veterans Day, and we're going to be probably one of the most famous poems for aviators we're going to be talking about, and that poem's title is called High Flight. Now, the first time I saw this poem, or saw this video that you're going to see, I was back when I was a kid, and this is back when television wasn't on all night, where it came back on about 7 in the morning or sometimes 6 in the morning. And what would happen is there was a test pattern all night long. A test pattern was just a screen with a round circle in it and some bars and so forth. It's what the stations used to put up to instead of broadcasting. When they would start the day's broadcast, they would play the national anthem, and then the station that we happened to be watching would always play this clip before the day's broadcast start. This is the first time I became aware of it and loved it, and I think it probably had an inspiration of me joining the Air Force. So let me go ahead and show the clip of High Flight.
I have slit the surly bonds of earth and danced the skies on laughter-silvered wings. Sunward I've climbed and joined the tumbling mirth of sun-split clouds and done 100 things you have not dreamed of. Wheeled and soared and swung high in the sunlit silence. Hovering there, I've chased the shouting wind along and flung my eager craft through footless halls of air. Up, up the long, delirious, burning blue, I've topped the windswept heights with easy grace, when never lark nor even eagle flew. And while with silent, lifting mind, I've trod the high, untrespassed sanctity of space, put out my hand, and touched the face of God.
Thin air. When you're that high up in the altitude, I'm sure that was so inspiring of what he did. I want to talk about, the poem was by John Gillespie Maggie Jr. Now, John was a World War II pilot. He was with the Canadian Air Force, but was an American that went to Canada 2 years before America got involved in the war, and became a pilot. He was trained in England and became a fighter pilot, and the story goes on. And we're going to be telling you a little more about that story, and we're going to be showing you some photographs. And this is Veterans Radio Ministry and Devotional, the rest of the story. Pilot and a poet. His poem High Flight is perhaps the most well-known and best-loved verse in aviation history. The story of how McGee came to write his famous poem and what happened to him afterwards are not that well known. However, when the Second World War broke out, the United States was a neutral country, It would be more than 2 years before Japan attacked at Pearl Harbor, and America joined the fight. And like many men of his generation, McGee could not stand aside and watch as country after country fell to the Nazis. Therefore, he crossed the border into Canada and enlisted in the Royal Canadian Air Force. He was accepted into flight training in 1940, and later that year had earned his wings. He was shipped off to England in July 1941, and unlike most Americans, for McGee, England wasn't some distant place. Far away, unknown place. His mother was English, and he had done more of his schooling there. Most of his schooling he had done there. His father was an angelic priest from America, and the two had met in China as missionaries and gotten married there. He was born in Shanghai in 1922, and when he finished his high school, he was accepted on a scholarship to Yale University, but he chose to fight instead. He had just turned 19 years old when he shipped off in July in 1941. On arrival, he was posted to number 5302U, flying from an airfield in Wales. McGee was put into the cockpit of a Supermarine Spitfire Mk-1, and he had it for the first flight on August 7th, 1941. Less than 2 weeks later, on his seventh flight, he took the Spitfire up for high altitude to get a feeling of how the plane would handle in thin air so far up. He coached it around and did wingovers, loops, rolls, and he flew along. He recalled the words of a poet who he had once studied in school, a man named Hubert Hicks, in the poem, "The Blind Man Flies." Hicks had ended it with these words, "Now joy is mine through my long night. I do not feel the roof. I do not feel the rod. I dance the streets of heaven and touch the face of God." After landing, taking inspiration from Hicks, McGee worked the last line of the poem into his. And on 2 weeks later, he sent it to his parents on the back of a letter, writing, "I am enclosing the verse that I wrote the day of the other day. It started at 30,000 feet and was finished as soon as I landed." His father was serving at St. John's Episcopal Church in Washington, D.C., located straight across from the White House and often called the President's Church. Being proud of the son, he had the poem printed in the church bulletins 20 days later on. September 23rd, about the time the poem was first read by the congregation, McGee was ready for combat. He was assigned to number 412 Fighter Squadron of the Royal Canadian Air Force. And they flew from the airfield at RAF Digby. The squadron upgraded to the newest model of the Spitfire, the MKVB, and began flying air defense and convoy escort missions right from the start. On November 8th, he flew as part of the 12-plane mission escorting a bomber command raid on their railway workshops in Little France, where his fight of 4 Spitfires crossed the French coast. Just east of Dunkirk, they were attacked by a squadron of Focke-Wulf 190s, German aircraft, led by a German leading ace, a man named John Meenberg. In the span of less than 2 minutes, the other 3 planes in McGee's flight were shot down, including his squadron commander. He barely escaped alive, though he fired his guns. He claimed no damage done. A month later, the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor. The next day, the United States declared war, and immediately Hitler declared war on America with 2.5 months of combat. Operations already behind him, he continued to fly for the Royal Canadian Air Force. Just a few days later, sadly, on December 11th, McGee was killed. Not in action, but in an accident. This flight of 4 Spitfires had just completed a routine training mission above the clouds. They were participating in air combat maneuvers near the airfield of RAFT Tangmar. When the flight turned back to its base, they spotted a gap in the clouds and descended. At only 1,400 feet above the ground, they crossed paths with a student flying an Oxford trainer. The student pilot, Ernest Aubrey Griffin, was just under the clouds. It happened so fast that neither the student pilot had time to react. The time was 11:30 in the morning. Griffin was probably killed instantly. As for McGee, his Spitfire fell out of control toward the ground. He managed to bail out, but he was too low for his parachute to open. He had been in England for just 6 months and in combat for only 2. Not long after McGee's death, his poem was featured in newspapers across the United States. The Library of Congress hailed him as the first poet of the war. Pilot Officer John Gillespie McGee's body was laid to rest in the village of Sopwith, not far from where he fell. His gravestone was inscribed with the first and last lines of the poem. Oh, I have slipped the surly bonds of earth and put out my hand and touched the face of God. McGee's poem reminds us of not only the joy and beauty of flight, but also the true cost of war. McGee's poem, his poem also reminds us of one of the Psalms of David. Oh, that I had wings like a dove, for then would I fly away and be at rest. Ed Marshall back here in the studio. I just want to say 2 things before I continue with the devotion. I want to thank the inspiration that Thomas Van Hare gave me looking at his historic wings. And I would like to thank him for helping us find out more information. It's hard sometimes to find out information on some of the obscure bits of history. But I would like at this time to say, if you have a chance, check it out. Check out his site on YouTube and his website. And that website is Historic Wings. And I'm making sure that it is what the website is. But historicwings.com. That's Drew helping us out right there. Please go to his website, and he's got a lot of viewers. He does some incredible information, and I just want to make sure that he gets credit for helping us out and being able to going to that YouTube site and getting some information. Also, I want to give credit to on our daily bread. As you can see, I've got all kinds of notes and everything that I stick to it. But this was inspirational, and this piece was done by Cindy Casper, and I would like to tell you a little bit about that. And she titled this in this devotional, Through Thick and Thin. And it reminds us of how this story relates to even today. On January 28, 1986, the U.S. Space Shuttle Challenger broke apart 73 seconds after takeoff. In a speech to comfort the nation, President Ronald Reagan quoted from the poem High Flight, which John Gillespie McGee, a World War II vet pilot, had written. the high, untrespassed sanctity of space and putting out his hand and touch the face of God. Although we can't literally touch the face of God, we sometimes experience a stunning sunset or a place of meditation that nature gives us an overwhelming sense that he's near. Some people call these moments thin places. The barrier separating heaven and earth seems to grow a little thinner. God feels a little closer. The Israelites may have experienced a thin place as they sensed the nearness of God in the desert wilderness. God provided a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night to lead them through the desert in Exodus. We're staying in the camp. The glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. Throughout all their travels, they knew God was with them. As we enjoy the incredible beauty of God's creation, as we grow conscious that his presence is everywhere, as we talk with him in prayer, listen to him, and read the scriptures, we can only feel fellowship with him anytime and anywhere. When places in nature make you feel especially close to God, what places are those that you have? Can you speak to him anytime and anywhere? In prayer, I'd like to close. Father, help me look and seek to find you wherever I am, even if I'm lost in the desert or in the wilderness or 20 fathoms underneath the ocean. Let me reach out my hand and touch your face. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Thank you for listening and coming to our website. Remember, Veterans Radio Ministry is a volunteer radio ministry, and we can use your help. Go to veteransradioministry.com. You can find out how you can help. We're a ministry of Trinity Church in Wesley Chapel, Florida. Our studio is located here at Trinity Church, Studio T, and of course our backup studio is in Zephyr Hills. But all the equipment and everything that we have here has been donated and given to us and bought as gifts to help us spread this word. We hope you have a blessed week, and we'll be talking to you soon. God bless. And we remind you of the devotionals, the rest of the stories. Thanks.